cheers for coming in, Simon, for having a chat with me.
A pleasure.
So obviously, thanks for coming down and seeing Awestruck, the gathering. So
it's a great place, isn't it? It's a fab place. I've just had the guided tour as well. So many excellent spaces here that it's I want to move in.
I'll just take the back.
I want to take over. I was thinking with colour schemes, pastel colours would be nice in here. Where will all my stuff go?
So when are you going to move this stuff? When
Exactly.
Like, so if this is mine, where are you going to be?
Exactly. Where's my dressing room? Is this my trailer? But no, it's great. It's a fab space, isn't it?
Oh, the possibilities that Alan's got with all the art classes go for the kids and
yeah,
stuff.
and the band room and everything as well. I was hearing some great stuff about some interesting musical equipment as well. More of that later.
That later to
More
come.
of that later, yeah, it's a wee secret.
But
yeah, it was quite summer, yeah.
Oh, it's brilliant. So I've been following you for a while since we worked together on Crime Lord and stuff.
Yeah.
So how's the Benny Lynch story been going?
It's going really well. So we finished the first tour. He says hopefully the first tour, but we finished the tour just end of June. It was great. So we did a mini tour of Scotland, and the idea is to bring it back to Glasgow next year because the nearest we came to Glasgow was Giffnock, so it was sold out there. We could have sold it out for 6 days in a row, but it did really, really well. So we got it on its feet. We know there's a couple of wee things that just need changed. A couple of things need to be put back into the script, I think, and make the set a little bit bigger just for some of the venues we've got next year. But it's great. Cast are all agreed. All want to do it again. I'm dying to get going again, but it's dead expensive putting it on. So we need to, obviously, we've got another show to come out first. Hopefully the money off that will then enable us to tour the next one. So the plan is to tour 2 shows next year. We've got a new show that will be launching soon. And then on the back of that should go down about September, October. We're looking at doing Benny Lynch again, bringing it to a mini tour again, places like Ayr, Greenock, Dundee, places that went down really, really well, and then bring it back to Glasgow for a central Glasgow venue for a good few days. We're like a week in town. It's not really had a Glasgow run yet, and everywhere we've been, we even got standing ovations everywhere it went. Ayr Gaiety, first night standing ovation. So and it's been full everywhere. So we could have sold it, but I just don't think it's found its audience yet.
Yep.
But it's a really, really good retelling of Benny's story. There's been about 3 or 4 plays of Benny's life. This is the first one I think that tells, the rags to riches to rags, all 3 parts of it in equal measure.
So it's not just focusing on one element.
No,
of the story,
exactly.
It's kind of covered the full broad spectrum of it.
And a lot of the shows I've seen before are read have different slants on his life, whether it's the sort of DT situation when he's recovering in Mount Malerney in Ireland, or whether it's the sort of tragic end of his life. So it's nice to focus on, because without giving it away, the ship goes down at the end, but without giving it away too much, the interval is a high point. It's got to be a big high point, and during the shows they were all shouting Benny, Benny, Benny. So it's great. So you've got him winning the world championship, and just a blackout,
Right
just absolutely, just right on Stephen Purdon. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. As Benny, I mean, there's no other actor I know that could have played him.
No, I mean, when I had seen initially when you cast, you said Stephen, I'd seen obviously the pictures of him and Benny, and
Yeah,
I was
amazing.
Like, wow,
amazing. He got one of the makeup artists at River City to do the hair as well one day, and did a sort of makeup test. Did that kind of. There's a wedding picture of Benny Lynch where he's sort of laughing, and he did the same sort of look. I went, my God, I was right. The casting was perfect.
Perfect done.
I saw him years ago. See, it was. I've been looking at him for about 6. I wrote the script about 7 years ago, and for the last 3 or 4 years, I went to an audition for a TV series, and he was in before me. He just kind of bounced out and across the car park, and I went, that's Benny. It's definitely Benny. And I was looking at him, I was chatting away to him, going, you're the guy. Mm-hmm. You're the fucking guy.
When you get the timing right, and you're the guy.
Exactly. We can just get this. But so I wrote a terrible script, and then so we kind of quickly got rid of that. And then David Carswell wrote the script. We worked hard on it, and it's gone really, really well. So fingers crossed, we'll have 2 shows next year, and fingers crossed we've got a really good run in Glasgow, because that's what it needs.
Oh, it'll pick up a big run.
Absolutely.
Especially if you've got a whole week run it.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if somebody's like, I can't get that day.
They've got 5 nights or 6 shows. Ideally, you get 5 days and 6 shows. You get a matinee and a Saturday would be the best thing. But it was interesting because I met. I was part of the Benny Lynch statue campaign. There's a big campaign to get a statue for him as well. So they've been helping us a lot in the writing of the play. And his granddaughter came over from Canada the other day, so I just met her and photographed with her at the People's Palace. Amazing, absolutely amazing. And she gave us her blessing as well, because part of it is you're writing about somebody. Some of the people they're not still alive, but their families are all still alive.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stories we got that have never been seen before came from Sammy Wilson's family. So Douglas Wilson, Sammy Wilson was Benny's coach, and he was the Alex Ferguson of his day. And when he split with Benny, which was Benny's idea, Benny's life then sort of went out of control. So he was the one that really kept him in the street.
So
and
he's that
narrow.
sort of linchpin that kept
He's a bit
going.
like Jock Stein and Jimmy Johnson or something. It's that kind of thing. That when somebody keeps somebody in the game that long,
Aye, they're that glue.
and then they go, and the glue all comes unstuck. So that's very much what happened with him. So a lot of the stories came from Douglas Wilson, who's Sammy Wilson's grandson. And he's got a trunk, and the trunk is letters, photographs, diaries, everything. It's treasure trove of things that they were to do with their life together. Because as soon as Benny left him, Sammy Wilson had a gym down in Clyde Place, where the building, the Barclays building down in at the Riverside, and that's where the gym was, the New Polytechnic he called it. And once Benny left him, he closed the gym, never took another fighter on. Broke his heart so much. He never took another fighter on. There's a wonderfully poignant story that we got from Douglas. And it was his father, Eddie, is still alive. He's a wonderful guy, Rocksteady Eddie, they call him. Tough guy as well, but just very funny, lovely man. And he's Sammy Wilson's son.
Right.
And he is the last person we spoke to and were involved, who shook hands with Benny Lynch.
Right. Okay.
And we put the scene into the show, and basically he remembers he was 5 years old. He was holding his dad's hand, and they were looking into Watt Brothers in the bottom of Sauchiehall Street, the corner of Sauchiehall Street. They were in the window of Watt Brothers, and he remembers his father saying, "Oh fuck," can I swear? Too late. Oh fuck. He said, "Oh fuck." He said, "Don't turn round. That's Lynch now." And the wee Eddie, stood and looked in the window as Benny Lynch put himself back together and shuffled up and said, "Come on, Sammy, I'm ready. Let's go. We can try again." And he saw this obviously shambolic drunk, and he just slipped a fiver into his pocket. I went, "No, son." He walked away. It was the last time they ever met.
Wow.
And that hasn't been in a play before. That hasn't been anywhere. And that came from a simple conversation we had. One memory from Eddie passed on to his son Douglas that we spoke about one day when we had lunch at the People's Palace.
It just shows the
And
connections.
that's absolutely
the
still
stories you
that
can get
hand.
from
I shook
people.
hands with him, then goes to shake hands with Benny Lynch, and then you get Benny's family coming. So we had a lot of toing and froing with them because they weren't happy with the script. They didn't want the negative stuff to go in. They wanted the show to finish on a high, which it does. You know, the show finishes on a high. Him winning the world title, that's it. But it's not a gang show. You're cheating the audience unless you tell the full story of him. And it's a Google search away. That's what we kept saying. It's a Google search away of all the bad stuff. So we had to put it back in, and it worked. It worked really, really well. So they eventually gave us a blessing, and I think to get the blessing of Benny Lynch's family on this, and his granddaughter was Sharon was just lovely that day, and she said, "Give me a big hug," and said, "Thank you for bringing this story back to, you know."
I think obviously you probably have got that full acceptance for the family because, like you said, you're not actually just telling. You're not picking and choosing.
No,
what elements
exactly.
to tell. You're not
No.
like,
And you're not
"I only want to focus
sensationalising
on
it.
that," or, "I only
Exactly.
want to focus on this, or
And that's part of it. That's certainly with the journalism that's happened over the last sort of 30 years is focused on that, the drunk Glaswegian.
Yeah.
Whereas people now, time has passed now. I mean, this is a guy that's got a domestic violence history as well. It's not an easy Glasgow hero to have. There's reasons why Glasgow City Council will not put the statue up to him. There's a reason why they took it to Central Station. Central Station, when he won the world title against Jackie Brown in Manchester, Benny Lynch returned to Scotland, the most famous Scotsman in the world, without a doubt. He was the most famous Scotsman in the world. Nobody was more famous than him. There was 100,000 people on the streets to meet him. There was 20,000 on the concourse of Glasgow Central Station. If anywhere was going to put a statue up to him, it should be there.
oh, definitely.
But they said no. So the rail company said no. Because he's a contentious figure. So that's what you're dealing with. So unless I think the statue's going to go on public land, because they've raised loads of money for it already, unless it goes on private land, it's very difficult to find somewhere where it would go.
I suppose with a story like that, it then becomes the point where, at what point do you focus on the different points of the story? You can't just choose the negative sides and go, "Oh, we won't put a statue up because of this."
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
And considering
so
some of the
does that-
statues that are
so
up
does
just
that-
now,
so does
to some of the
that-
people that don't deserve statues.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
there are people that are slave traders. There are
Exactly.
people like Cumberland that have statues up. You know what I mean, they vanquished
Like, oh, that's fine.
Jacobites. So yeah, that's fine. They're like, because they've been there for a long time. Nah,
It's like,
statues
why
are
does-
statues are as this place is art.
Yeah, and why, like you said, why does that one element outweigh all that positive?
Absolutely,
all that good it did?
absolutely.
So it's like, alright, we're supposed to wipe out all that because of that.
Scotland's
And that's in the
first
past,
undisputed
that's-
world champion. So I believe you should have a statue up. You know, there are statues to a lot worse people in the world. You know, and that's not condoning anything you know that he did or his behaviour, but he was an alcoholic, a dreadful alcoholic at the time. But his parents were as well. So
But the thing is, I suppose there's so many people that everybody knows in every walk of life that maybe has alcohol issues, but there then becomes the point of, do you focus on the alcohol issues and he stayed with having alcohol issues, or he's had alcohol issues but look at what he's achieved?
yeah,
He's still
absolutely.
went on, he's done stuff, he's achieved
Absolutely.
stuff.
Well, if you look at something like Gaza, Gaza's a perfect example of it. So Gaza is of the same sort of genetic makeup then as Benny Lynch, hugely talented sportsman and an incredibly famous sportsman. But Gaza, the difference between Gaza and the difference between Benny Lynch and Paul Gascoigne is that Paul Gascoigne has had as much help as physically, financially possible.
Yeah.
Benny Lynch didn't have any of that. So he became a bum on the streets, you know, because of an illness that ran through his family as well. So that's part of it as well. But it's just really the good thing about theatre and the good thing about doing a show is it unpicks all these issues. It gives people, it puts them back onto the front pages of the papers. It puts the stories back out there. It lets people with a modern slant look at it as well and analyse things with the benefit of hindsight. Maybe this is something. One of the guys wrote to one of the theatres afterwards and asked us to take it into schools, with addiction workshops then to go with it. So that's something we're looking at as well. So things got legs, you know. So you're looking at domestic violence is involved here, you know, alcohol and addictions is involved here. You know,
as you're saying, like, they won't put a statue up because he's alcohol in the past. Then it becomes a point where if Benny Lynch's story was nowadays, he would have that support.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He would have.
So it's kind of hypocritical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we would help him now, but just because we didn't help him then, no.
Yeah, exactly. But it's that kind of how fast somebody's life unravels, and he became a bit of a pariah at the time. So, you know, there was a TV version of it with Mark McManus. You know, Taggart. Mm-hmm. He did the TV version in the 70s, and I think that started with him begging at Central Station.
Right.
8 years after he's won the world title there and become back a hero. So within 8 years, his life's unravelled so much that he's a jakey, begging and getting and being a real pain in the arse for people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he'd become. He'd become a social pariah in that time. It was interesting. I don't know how true that is that he actually went to Central Station and begged, but he was certainly, you know, on his uppers. And all the friends he had and everyone around him, all the hangers on, all disappeared really, really quickly as well. As soon as the money and the fame went, you know.
As soon as the benefits for everybody who, like you said, were hanger-ons.
Absolutely.
As soon as that goes, they're like, nice knowing you, thanks, bye.
And it's part of it as well, but not moving out the Gorbals. You know, part of it is just he didn't want to leave. He didn't want to better himself that way. That sounds terrible, but he didn't want to leave where he came from. He was dragged down by the same bums that were all around him, the corner boys that were around him all his life. So unless you break that sort of mentality and you break the mould, and you actually move physically away from that, it's very hard not to get dragged back into that. And you're looking at something, this is what I love about doing this, especially a historical play, is, you know, 100 years ago, and 80 years ago when this was done, there was 40 pubs in his street. There's 40 pubs in the one corner street where he lives, between Florence Street and Rose Street and round the back to Rutherglen Roads. 40 pubs. How can you not be a chronic alcoholic if that's what you do? When everyone's hard working, hard living, you know, the work's thirsty, tough steel work and coal mining, it's this ship, you know, merchant navy. That's what people did. You drank. Domestic violence happened everywhere.
Yep.
Drunkenness happened everywhere. It was massive overcrowding. There was a reason why there was a slum clearance. I mean, when you look at the Gorbals at times, it was so infested and overcrowded that the plague returned there in 1900. The plague returned to Glasgow in 1900 in the Gorbals.
Just shows you,
doesn't it? So the Highlanders and the Irish coming over after the two potato famines, the two sort of blights in 1848, I think was the first one. So the two main potato famines, the Highland clearances. Mm-hmm. These Highlanders and these Irish that then come over were squeezed into this tiny little former plague pit and former leper colony as the Gorbals. The Gorbals, the history of the Gorbals is amazing. The Gorbals was a leper colony until the merchants that built all their wonderful houses and the businesses across the water said, "We like that land over there. Clear the lepers." The lepers were cleared, and they put up Palladian houses. They put up these wonderful grand houses, and that's what Clyde Place is to this day, which is all legal firms and lawyers. All belong to the court. They're all law firms. That was merchants' houses, and before that was a leper colony.
Wow.
And behind that, you get these warrens of tenements that go up and up and up. They then got so overcrowded, they pulled them all down. I mean, if you look at Gorbals now, it's all pulled down. Mm-hmm. But these were so overcrowded that the plague came back. So, that's a hard start in life.
I suppose it's any wonder when you're in that environment, like you said, if you're around people who you're always used to having a drink with and bring you down.
Professional sportsman or not, you know? Yeah.
Oh, I think it's like any professional sport, isn't it? Like, you get to a point where everybody loves you,
Yeah.
you're really getting something.
Yeah, yeah.
But then, as soon as you need any help or support, it's
Fair weather
used
friends
you
have
up,
all gone.
used you up and
Absolutely.
spat you out.
True. And the
That's
thing
it.
is, he was drinking in the ring towards the end of his career. You know, his last few fights, I think the Ariel Toma fight when he lost, he was famously knocked out in the ring in London. But they carried him to the train, drunk. His training camp were lying to him. That's what's obvious to me looking at the research. He was massively overweight, and yet they're weighing him twice a day. But they're obviously fixing it and betting against him, his own camp. So he then goes in, loses the fight before the fight's begun because he's overweight, and then got to pay a £50 or £100 fine, which is £5,000, £10,000 nowadays. So he loses. He's fighting for nothing. He's getting damaged and fighting for nothing.
And his team are winning.
And everyone's betting against him and winning. And he was eventually having bottles of brandy in his towels. And he would find one and throw it away, and he would find out he would have another one planked somewhere in his towels before the fight. That's what you're dealing with. So he was bloated, very, very, overweight. Eventually went back to the booths, fought in the boxing booths for buttons. My grandfather fought in the boxing booths as well. I never spoke to him about it though. But he fought at the same time as him in Kilmarnock and saw him. You know, yellow, bloated, but still with the ring. Still with everything. Yeah, but he still had the robe. And his pug Morgan was with him, one of his trainers. And he still had the Benny Lynch jumpers. We had them all made for the show and everything as well. Just heartbreaking. We'll make a great film. That's the thing. So we're looking to try to do that, but obviously it's a different thing altogether. But that'd be the dream. That's how we finish it. You know, I'd like to tour it for 3 years altogether, and then I'd like to do a film or TV version of it. I think it would do really well. I mean, because it's set at the same time as Peaky Blinders. You know, and you've got the Billy Boy Fullerton and all that in it as well, the Billy Boy gangs in it, who then come into Peaky Blinders this series. A part I tried to audition for, but I was too fucking tall. So I was told.
Really?
Yeah, they're all fucking Smurfs, and Peaky Blinders are all midgets. So, so apparently that's that. So Billy Fullerton comes into the show as well, and he famously came down to try and get money off Sammy Wilson. He'd been done, they tried to blow a safe or something, they'd been done. And he said, right, so you need to give him money, tax money. He said, he was going to give me any money. Right, we'll fuck off back to Brighton then. And pulled a handgun on him. These Billy Boys that were sent down and fired it in the street. It was great. Again, these are scenes that we heard and put into the play. So yeah, so it's all based on truth.
That'd be a good tie-in.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, wouldn't it? Yes, that's my pitch.
Exactly. Oh, well, thanks for coming in and having a chat with
A
us.
pleasure, man. A pleasure. Anytime. So I'll come back in and we'll when it's all up and running properly, and maybe talk about the next play.
Yes, definitely.
Whatever that may be.
Oh yeah. Aye.
I won.
Thanks very much.
Cool. Anytime.
Cheers.